Hello, how you doing?
Good. I wanted to talk to you about evolution.
Oh, okay. How you doing?
Study fossil records?
Sorry, let me straighten out over here. Hello, my name is Edward. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Sammy.
Okay. Your question?
Oh, well, I was just wondering if you studied fossil records
Um,
and sort of what your thoughts are on,
from what I know about the fossil records, I would just say, how do you know how old the things come from those fossil records? How would you base
well, there's a
the
bunch
date,
of
the
different
dating methods on those?
methods. There's the layers method, which is the most precise, and we also have carbon dating.
So how do they work out those?
So the layers method basically assumes that since they're lower in the ground, that means they're older, which is really obvious.
Is that absolutely true? You believe in absolute truth, first of all?
No, absolutely not.
So then you just basically would destroy your whole knowledge claim about what you're saying about that.
I'm kind of big on radical doubt. So if you're
So you really can't deal with evidences based upon not appealing to absolute standards of truth, correct?
Well, I don't really think that anything can be known for certain.
Is that absolutely true?
No.
So you just contradicted yourself
Yeah,
right there.
I do
It's
that
an
a lot.
inconsistent.
Yeah,
And does consistency matter?
No.
It doesn't. So why would you be at a university that deals in consistency?
I don't really think they deal in consistency
Yes,
that
they
much.
do.
I'm
They
really
teach you
great at writing
they teach you a formulated lesson. There's a lesson plan, and it's absolutely true. They formulate a lesson plan for you guys, and you guys have to pass certain tests, and they have to be absolutely to the standard of what they give you. Is that absolutely true that they do that?
No, I don't think so.
Is it absolutely true that you don't think so?
I don't think anything's absolute.
Is that absolutely true? You don't think anything is absolute?
No, because sometimes I change my mind.
Is it absolutely true?
I know you like
really
this word
looking
a
very
lot,
foolish
but
right
you're
now.
not really going to get
looking
very
very
far
foolish
with
right
someone
now.
who doesn't actually believe in like the construct of existence. Like if you want to go on
You're
the
making
radical
truth claims
doubt
that you can't account for right now.
Why would I be able to account for anything?
Because it's arbitrary, it's meaningless, everything you're saying right
Yeah,
now.
everything's meaningless.
Yeah, so why
That's
even have a
nihilism.
conversation if everything's meaningless?
Well,
But I'll
because-
tell you why. Because you know truth exists, and you know absolute truth, objective morals, and all of the above exist. And it's because of God. That's why. You already know that God exists, man. You already know. And that's
I mean, I don't even know that I exist, so.
is that absolutely true that you don't know that you exist?
Yeah, I would say that.
So you do believe in absolute truth because you appeal to it every day as you deny it. But I ask you to account for what you just said. You can't do it.
Well,
And
sure. Well, I
so
can
what you're
account
left
for
with,
it.
ma'am,
I
and you're at a
don't think I
university.
exist
Remember, you're at a
because
university.
I don't believe that we can trust our senses. So
Is that
even though
absolutely
I
true?
see things, I don't know that they're actually there. Even though we hear things,
But you're
I don't
using your
think-
senses when saying that.
Yeah,
Now, you're using your
absolutely.
speech. Yeah, so you're being inconsistent even with that.
Oh, I told you I was.
So you're justifying your reason with your reasoning right now, ma'am, and that's a problem.
I feel like
Because
that's more of what you're doing.
because you don't deal. Well, I'm not.
You've been
Because
using
I have a.
over and over and over again.
I have a standard of
Talk
truth.
about nihilism.
You've never asked me where I get truth from. So see, so we're not doing the same thing.
Well,
So
that's
if you
true.
ask me where I get truth from, which you
Yeah.
just did,
Go for it.
God reveals things to me in such a way I can know them for certain. So, and I'll
Yeah,
show
but
you that.
How do you trust your senses if you can't trust your senses outside of your own sense of perception in and of
Well,
yourself?
let me ask you: is it impossible for the Christian God to reveal things to me in such a way I can know them for certain? Is it impossible?
I would say, yeah, it's impossible.
Well, you can't, not because you're making an absolute knowledge claim and you say it's impossible. You're saying certainly that's not the case. So you're making an absolute knowledge claim, and I'd like to know what you base truth on to say it's impossible.
I don't base truth on anything.
So
There's no such thing
so
as-
when you said it's impossible, it's based upon a whim of no intellectual epistemology.
No, it's
You have no
it's,
epistemology.
Radical doubt. It comes from the theories of Rene Descartes, but also it's been
Yeah, sure.
by Nietzsche.
Well, Rene Descartes agreed that I think
Well,
therefore
yeah,
I
but I
am
disagree.
is begging the question, justifying his reasoning
Yes.
with his reasoning. He agreed that in what he was doing. So what I'm
he
saying
said
is you're
that.
doing
What
the
I'm
same
saying
thing.
is Nietzsche said, I think therefore I am is simply from cognito ergo sum, which assumes a doer for that which
Yeah,
is
but
done,
the
which is
assumption-
merely an effect of our language and our linguistic reasoning.
But the assumption
Therefore-
presupposes the assumption, which is circular reasoning.
No, so I'm saying therefore, if our linguistic systems were different and we didn't deal in absolutes the way you're trying to deal with everything.
Because you're dealing with absolute right now.
No, not really.
Right now.
No.
So you could be wrong about what you just said.
Sure.
So you do deal in absolutes. And you can't disagree because when you disagree, you affirm truth in order to deny it. So is absolutely true you disagree with what I say?
No, sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't.
Is it absolutely true sometimes you agree?
No.
So see, you're giving up on knowledge. You can't know anything to be true. And that's the
Yeah,
problem
no,
with
that's
justifying the
literally,
reason with
that's
your
what
reason.
I just said, is you can't know anything. to be
You
true.
can't
Hell
know anything.
yeah.
But you can't know what I know.
No, well, I don't even know
If you can't know anything,
exists or
you
not.
can't say I do it.
Goodness, I mean, you could just
See,
be a
I
figment of my
have a
imagination.
justification for my reasoning. God reveals things to me in such a way I can know them for certain. So I get out of your little hamster wheel. So I can know things,
Yeah, but
whether
again,
you can't know anything.
You don't exist.
You don't know that. You can't say that.
That's
You don't know
true.
anything.
But I've decided that you
You're at a university, you don't know anything. How bad is that?
I know, right?
See, I don't need to go to your university and I know
Only a
things.
fool claims to know things for certain.
I know, but you can't even know what you just said. So you got to run away because you can't reason out this thing logically.
I mean, here's the thing.
I'm here to
I've
peel
said
logically.
the word absolute truth over and over and over
See,
again. I'm a
that
little
is
bit
my
more-
premise, man. That is my premise. I wasn't rude to you. I'm just following through with what you actually
No, but
believe.
you said the word
Evidence
absolute
presupposes
like
knowledge.
12 times, and I said we're here to talk about nihilism.
Sure.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about nihilism,
You gotta
we're
have-
going to talk about the fact
Based
that
on
nothing
truth.
is real.
Based on truth.
No, there's no such thing as truth. Nothing
So
is
everything
true,
you just
nothing
said
is
was
false.
arbitrary and meaningless.
Yeah.
So you can't have a conversation. That's why you're walking up. Because you
that's
can't have
what
a
I'm saying
conversation
is
because you don't know
everything
anything.
is arbitrary and meaningless. There's no meaning
That's
of
my
life.
premise.
There's no God. There's no us.
All right,
there's no
everything you just
existence,
said, is that
nothing
absolutely
exists.
true?
No.
So there is meaning of life. There is purpose. You see the inconsistency here. It's completely
Really fun,
inconsistent.
isn't it?
This
I mean,
is
'cause
awesome.
he's trying to find why God exists, and I'm like, you know,
You can't know it.
no, I don't know anything.
You don't know anything, right?
Well, you don't know
So
anything
follow
either.
through with it and just sit there and be quiet. Let me tell you that Jesus died for your sins and rose again the third day.
Sorry. No.
Did you understand what I just said? That means you know
Um,
things. Did you know the alphabet to formulate the structure
Yeah,
and
but
what
why
I was
is the
saying?
alphabet in
To
the
know what
order
words
that it
meant?
is? Like, that's
So
the
you know
question,
things.
is why is the alphabet in the order that it is? Isn't that arbitrary?
You couldn't figure that out. I can because my worldview has an epistemology. I can justify my knowledge claims because God reveals things to me in such a way I can know them for certain, whereas you have none.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
You
it.
justify
Right,
your
we've
reasoning
already
with your
been through
reasoning, and that's what I'm saying is a
not
problem.
justifying
It's an
anything.
unbeliever's
Nothing's
insanity
justifiable.
circle. It's insanity. You would
Yeah,
agree it's
pretty
insanity.
fun. Yeah,
Is it fun?
it is fun.
Is it fun when I
Honestly,
tell you
I'm
you
having
can't even
fun.
know what fun means?
Yeah, no, I would have told you
Yeah,
that
you would
because
agree you don't know what fun
is an
means.
abstract concept.
Do you know what fun means?
No, abstract concept.
Do you see what is an abstract concept? Do you know what an abstract concept is?
Concept which doesn't exist.
Is that absolutely true?
No.
There you go. You don't even know what that is. So you're speaking arbitrarily,
but
and
I
it's
am-
meaningless
I am
to
just
talk to
talking
somebody
to you.
that has no epistemology. But I'm telling you, I do know things, and God reveals things to me, and He revealed to me that you need Him. Jesus died for your sins and rose again the third day, and you have no argumentative basis against it.
So how do
You can't argue.
this exist?
Well, for me to answer your question, you have to presuppose a standard of truth to understand what I'm saying,
Well, but
in
I
which
don't
you start with the same God I start with.
Why would you have the same God?
Well, remember when I explained that, you're stepping into my worldview. Remember when I explain it, you're stepping into my worldview to understand what I'm saying. Because you can't know anything in your worldview. So how do you know anything in your worldview? You keep disagreeing with me. How do you know anything in your worldview?
I don't.
You don't. So follow through and agree that in order for you to understand my answer to your question, you have to assume my worldview.
Okay.
You have to assume that God exists so you can understand my answer.
Yeah, but in my worldview, God doesn't.
Well, there you go. So you can't understand anything. Now, is your worldview based upon truth?
No.
Well, there you go. My worldview is based on truth. So since you can't know anything and your worldview is based on a fairy tale of your figment of your imagination, why don't you listen to reasoning and rationality and actual reality right now? Do you know? How do you know you're not a brain in a vat right now?
I don't know that. That's
There
my
you go.
worldview.
So that and
Goodness,
see
you could
when
be
you
a
say you
brain
don't know
in-
you're not a
brain
brain
in
in
a
a vat, you
different
can't
vat.
make knowledge claims about me.
A brain in a what?
Brain in a vat,
Like the Matrix.
like being in the Matrix or something.
Because
She
of
can't know that.
Within the confines of radical doubt, the assumption that the world exists is based on our own preconceptions, based on our senses, what we hear, think, feel, touch. But those are all internal to ourselves,
Is that
and they're only
absolutely true?
perceived through our brains.
You seem to have a lot of
we can't
knowledge
actually
claims.
prove that anything exists because we can't perceive things outside of ourselves.
Is that true?
No,
Do you know it?
no,
You don't even know it?
it's just a theory.
Why would you? Is it absolutely true? It's a theory.
Honestly, I'm
Do you know what a
comedian,
theory is?
So like, go for it. Like,
Do you know
I'm
what a
never
theory?
good
I'm
at
calling you out on what you claim to believe.
Yeah,
So you say you can't know anything. So everything you just said, you have to agree you don't know it.
yeah, I don't know it
Okay, so why say it?
because it's fun.
But sir, do you know that
So facts
God
don't
exists?
matter. You're not going to get anywhere with somebody that facts don't matter.
Well,
Do
sure,
you know
we
that
do.
God exists?
Absolutely, the same way you do. Everybody knows that God exists, including her. She's holding the truth and unrighteousness. Look at her. She's using truth as she's talking to
No,
you.
it's really
But then
funny.
when I ask her, is it true what you just said? She denies it. It's inconsistent. When you say there's no truth and you make a truth claim, and then I ask you, is that true? And she says no. Do you guys see the I don't need to appeal to college or university students to say that that's inconsistent. You guys know more than I
She
do.
wasn't
That
saying
it's
that was true. She was saying in the same way you can't prove that that's true, you can't prove God.
Okay, but is that true what you just said? Edward, take care, have a good one. Is that true what you just said?
We can't prove either side. It is true.
Yeah, is that true?
Yes, it is.
So he actually has somewhat of a reasonability here, whether you have none.
Right. Well, I'm saying you can't prove.
No, you deny truth. He actually affirms that it does exist.
No, he said that either side could be both true
Is that
or
true?
untrue.
Is that true?
That is a true.
No,
statement.
I'm not
Either
saying
one
sure.
could
Is
be
it true? Does absolute truth
Do you want
exist?
to go into like the origin of the word truth?
Yeah, go ahead. What is truth in your worldview?
Well, so I guess that depends on which linguistic philosophy we're using.
I just want to know
Personally,
how you appeal every day to a standard of truth.
So
What is truth in your
I
worldview?
agree to a Bryson-Period meaning, which essentially asserts that there's a speaker meaning, which is what I'm saying, and then there's a listener meaning, which is what you're saying. And the truth of any given word lies in the middle.
Is it
I mean, it's
true that
okay.
tree is there?
No.
not there.
provably.
Well, how is that not true?
Well, because I
Okay, now I
that
see
tree
a
outside of
disagreement
my
here.
senses,
Okay, that's
you
good.
know? So even though I say, well, my eyes see that the tree is there, that's true. There's the senses which are called my eyes perceive that there is a tree there that exists. However, that assumes that my eyes perceive correctly, which may or may not be true, considering the fact that we already know that everybody's eyes are different and perceive different things.
So let's ask this on the basis of reality. Is that tree there right now?
Well, it depends. So basically, if you conform to this standard of reality,
If
that would
you're
be
walking around
the
with your friends right now, and your friend says, "Hey, look at that tree over there," would you say, "Wait, you have to? There's a way we have to define truth here." Would you talk that way to them, or would you
I
say,
kind of do. They think it's really funny.
When you say
I
that
do
tree-
suggest real-time fandom games, Spider-Man Edition, MJ.
"Well, you can't validate your reasoning about anything you just said, so that's meaningless and arbitrary."
When you said that,
Arbitrary. And so, let me explain, because I know you kind of jumped in the middle of it, and I didn't want to make it sound. My name is Edward, by the way.
I'm Will.
Oh, Will, nice to meet you. I was trying to just show her the inconsistency of her worldview. All unbelievers have a inconsistent worldview. And I'm just showing that. I'm trying to be nice, but she was really getting obnoxious about, trying to follow through with what she was
Yeah,
saying.
it's pretty simple.
So I was just calling her out on what is truth, and she kept telling me that truth does not exist, or truth is subjective based upon the eye of the beholder,
Now that
stuff
I
like that.
disagree with. Yeah, I
So-
believe that tree exists.
Yeah.
I believe that tree
So,
exists.
so all I'm
But
getting
how,
is,
how can you tell me that God exists? Because I can see that tree and I can feel that.
all right. So it goes right into a plumb line or a standard, or what we call a calibration. So God inherently places and manifests standards of knowledge, truth within every human being. It's inherent within every human being. Okay, so all human beings have this. They don't need to be convinced. You don't have to teach a 3-4-year-old child that let me teach you the standards of truth here. When a tree equals a tree, the laws of logic, or the laws of uniformity of nature. When you see a tree, it will always be a tree. Tomorrow it won't turn into a cow. Or you don't have to teach a kid that.
Yeah.
But apparently, when I'm at this university, I have to teach university students that, which is pretty crazy. So the point being, where do you get a standard of truth or standard of rationality? And you couldn't say a consensus of society, because there's people that live outside of the consensus of society that still have moralities that are similar to human beings, that aren't checking it out with every other human being.
But what about if
So,
people groups were like human sacrifice?
But where does that come from? That's the question I'm asking. Where do you get standards of morality which are based upon standards of truth?
Right.
Because for you to say something is moral, you're saying it's certainly true it's moral.
Right. It would
So it has to be on a standard of truth. And so that's why I was showing her this chart, that it's not just evidence, like certain specific evidences. We're talking about the concept of evidence.
Okay.
The conceptual mechanism of evidence presupposes the conceptual mechanism of knowledge. Okay? So all of this, knowledge presupposes truth, because you would have to determine whatever knowledge you have is true knowledge or false knowledge.
Correct. Yeah.
But aren't lies even based upon a standard of truth?
Right. There has to
Because
be
you would have to
some
say
ground.
it's true, that's a lie,
Right. Exactly.
to be able to determine the difference.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Okay, so all these concepts come from God. So you have to start with God. So you don't reason to God. So you don't say, well, show me evidence of God. And then with the evidence, the knowledge that I get from that, and then the knowledge, I'll judge my own based on my own standard of truth to determine whether or not there's a God or not. I'm saying you have to start with God to even have the concept.
Okay. So it's almost flipping this here.
Well,
like
well,
putting
it's
God
it's what we
front.
call the first cause argument, if you want to say it that way. So the first cause of all of these concepts have to presuppose God.
Okay.
So the problem with all of these things is I could draw a line to the side on evidence, knowledge, and truth. And on the side right here, I could put reasoning. In order to understand the evidence, don't you have to employ your reasoning?
Yes.
In order to have knowledge, you have to employ your reasoning to determine what you're going to do with the knowledge.
Correct. Yes.
And then truth, you can't know truth but through your reasoning, correct?
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Okay. Now, the question is, if you have to use all these things through your reasoning, how do you validate your reasoning?
That would be where God comes in. That's what you're saying?
There you go.
But then why would it be incorrect for me to say that it's the Christian God, not someone like Allah or Cthulhu or someone else?
Now, get this. It's kind of really profound if I'm going to say this, okay?
Sure, yeah.
But it's like me asking you, how do you know you're breathing air?
Right.
Well, because you kind of use a pragmatic argument to say, well, because I'm breathing it, right?
Right, exactly. I'm the one doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I'm
And
experiencing.
I didn't need to figure out all the, to be able to, for my mom to say, okay, now that we know what air is, you can go ahead and breathe it.
Right. Yeah.
So just as that's inherent within you, the knowledge of God is inherent with you. All of these things presuppose God. It's inherent. You already know that God exists.
Right, okay. So from the baseline of God exists though, why is it Christ?
Now you see, now you're going back to your reasoning, but then when I ask you to validate your reasoning about trying to find out if it's Christ or not Christ,
Right.
you're using your reasoning and determining whether you're going to believe whatever truth claim is going to come out or not. So what is your source to determine if it's truth or not? Okay, you ready for this? You ready for this?
Yeah.
Let me give you another try. I think a lot of times these are very helpful when you get to see a visual.
Okay.
So you're going to go back to your own reasoning, and you're going to judge whether what I give you is the truth or not. And I'm telling you that it starts with God.
But
You don't reason to God. You start with God because He gives you the faculties of all these things to use. So it's kind of like this: the proof that God exists, that without God, you can't prove anything.
Right.
That's pretty much the premise.
Yeah.
So revelation from God is necessary for knowledge. Without all knowledge, something you don't know can contradict something you do know.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I do. I would.
So for you to know something, like we were talking about that tree over there.
Right.
For you to know that tree is there, you'd have to know everything. Because you'd have to know what that tree's made of. And we don't know everything that tree is made of. We could probably do some scientific method, some induction and so forth, or maybe some microscope. But ultimately, we're going to get to a point where we can't explain something, correct?
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. And you don't know what the unexplainable is. So you would agree if we drew a big circle. So I drew a big circle, and I put a little dot in the middle of that circle. That big circle represents all knowledge of the universe.
Okay.
And that little dot represents our knowledge, which would probably be really boasting, because we're talking about the universe here.
Right. Yeah.
So we got a little dot in the middle of that. Would it not follow that for you to know something, you'd have to know everything universally, because there would be something out there that could contradict something you do know. And that's the basis of science.
Yeah,
Science is always saying, they're always changing because they're always finding new things,
Right.
because they don't know everything.
Right.
With that assumption,
Yeah,
could you
yeah,
go with that assumption?
Yeah. That's
So,
makes sense.
for you to know something, you'd have to know everything. I would agree with that, but at the same time, I can justify my worldview and why I know things. Well, now watch. This is how it goes. For you to know something, you'd have to know everything, or have a revelation from someone who does know everything. So God reveals things to us in such a way that we can know them for certain. So I'm not saying he reveals to you everything.
I'm sorry. Do you have to go, or are you packing up?
No. Just let me talk just for a minute. We'll
I'll
outta
be
here.
back here on Wednesday. Are you here?
We
every
come
day,
out
or
2 times a month. Let me give you a
twice
card.
a month? Okay.
Let me give you my card, and it has my website on there. But we go out 2 times a month out here. Maybe you can email me. The website's on the back.
Sure.
And you can just maybe email me and say, hey, what time are you guys gonna? And then I can email you back and give you our schedule. So if you ever want to
Because I'm out here,
resume.
I can talk to you if you got to go today. I'll
Good. What's your
reach
name
out.
again?
Will.
Will. My name's Edward. My wife Becky.
Hi.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I'm sorry I'm holding you up here.
All right. But thanks again for the conversation. It was real good.
All right, yeah,
Real
no,
good.
this is great.
All
I
right.
enjoyed
You have a
talking
good
with
one now.
Have a nice day.
All right.
Good one.